Hey kids, I'm back again for another story. I bought this book for Bernice back at Christmas time, and Freddie likes it too. It's called Little Witch Hazel, A Year in the Forest by Phoebe Wall. She draws and writes the most incredible stories. If you want to see more of her books, take a look at any of your local bookstores, because this is one of the newer ones. A lot of the books that I read are ones that I found in thrift stores or at the library, but this one I bought at one of our local bookstores here in Vancouver, and I think you'll really like it. It's about a little witch who has a lot of really cool adventures in the woods where she lives, and the magic that happens around her, and just like kind of like the neat people and creatures and things that live around her. And I think it'll make you go around in your backyards and in the woods and different places and kind of like imagine the little fairies and creatures and animals that live right under your feet or in the bushes in your backyard. So I'm going to turn it around and read it to you. All right. So here we have Little Witch Hazel by Phoebe Wall. And she's collected, you can see she's really tiny because she's got some strawberries in her basket, and she is not much bigger than those strawberries. And on the inside cover is a map of the forest where she lives and all the places that are around. The general store, the cobbler, the post office. That's Bernice's favorite. Bernice really likes mushrooms. Mouse's house. So let's see what happens in this story. Spring, the orphaned egg. One afternoon, as Little Witch Hazel made her way home, she found something peculiar. An orphaned egg. The little witch thought, "Look at this. This egg is almost as big as her. I wonder what's inside of it. I wonder what must have fallen out of this tree." Now she's got to figure out how to help it. After waiting a while to see if anyone would come and claim it, Little Witch Hazel decided to roll the egg home. So here she is, rolling it all the way home up a big rock. And look at this cool little creature, sitting and reading the walnut journal. And this is where she lives. It's in the stump of a tree, in the trunk of a tree, I mean. And she's growing mushrooms in the garden and some little turnips or radishes. That looks like a really cozy house. After looking and listening and a few taps, Little Witch Hazel made a nest for the egg by the fire and went to bed. That's a good place to put it. Nice and cozy by the fire. That'll keep it warm. And look, she's drying some different foods on her little line. And here's her cozy bed with a cozy quilt. That looks like a very comfy little house. When she awoke, there was a poof of a bird staring at her. "Good morning." Bleep. Oh my gosh, that's a cute little bird. I wonder what kind of bird it is. The poof was an owl, and his name was Otis. Otis grew quickly. It wasn't long before he was too large to stay indoors. Look at him. He's so big and fluffy. And she's feeding him worms. And she has to stand on a stool to reach him. I like how in this picture you can see, it's like you're seeing into her house from the side, but it's nighttime all around. I wonder what your house looks like if you looked in it from the whole, if you took a whole wall off from the side, what would it look like? What would you see when you look through the wall? It's kind of neat to imagine. You'll be hearing about this at the next Mosswood community meeting. Otis, it's not polite to eat the neighbors. Look, she's getting held up by this. Owls grabbed her. Normally owls eat moles, so lucky she didn't get eaten. It was much harder for Little Witch Hazel to keep an eye on Otis when he lived outside. Very soon, Otis began to experiment with jumps and flaps and glides. He's learning how to fly. Until finally, he was ready to fly. Little Witch Hazel nestled into Otis's feathers as he soared smoothly and silently through the night. She loved the feeling of the cool breeze rippling her hair and flapping her cloak. With Otis, Hazel could see the forest in ways she'd never seen it before. It would be incredible to be able to fly above the whole forest. And on these fluffy feathers, that would be a cozy place to sit. But Little Witch Hazel knew Their time together was running out, for Otis was a wild thing who belonged with other owls. One evening she watched as he swooped into the forest, where another owl waited, their faces glowing like twin moons in the gathering dark. That is kind of what they look like. Their faces are usually more light than their feathers, and they glow like that. And the light's shining on them. And she's gathering, this looks like some chanterelle mushrooms. Yum. The next morning when Little Witch Hazel brought Otis his breakfast, he was nowhere to be seen. I guess it was time for him to go be with other owls. It's always hard to say goodbye to pets when you're helping animals in the wild. You want them to go back into the wild after they're feeling better. When Freddie was little, we found a crow in the park, a baby crow in the park that was really badly injured. We brought it home, and then we gave it some wet cat food, which it really liked to eat, and we kept it in a box so that it could rest. And in the morning, we opened the box and it hopped around on the patio, and then it flew away. And we always looked at crows when we would walk down the road by our house, and we'd always wonder, is that the crow that we helped? He left as mysteriously and suddenly as he had arrived, as wild things often do. So Little Witch Hazel blew a kiss to the sky and hoped that someday they would meet again. Oh, and now it's summer. Summer, the lazy day. Soon it'll be summer here. We'll be able to be lazy, lay on the beach in the sun. That'll be a nice feeling. It was the most beautiful day of summer, and Little Witch Hazel was busy. She had a million things to do, and it didn't help that everyone else in the forest seemed to be out enjoying the day. Some of us have errands to run, she muttered as she went to return her library books. She looks kind of ticked off, doesn't she? She's huffing. Everyone else is just hanging around, reading books and swinging and sleeping. But it appeared that the librarian was on holiday back in autumn. Look at that face. She looks pretty grouchy. So, it seemed, was the post gnome, whom Little Witch Hazel found napping in the sun when she tried to send a package. Hazel was sure that the cobbler would be open. She was always in her shop, and the little witch needed her boots before autumn came. But to her surprise, the cobbler too was out for the day. Gone swimming. Humph! She looks like she's a little bit annoyed. Do you ever feel like that when you go to do something and it's closed? Sometimes maybe on a long weekend when there's a holiday and you go to the pool or to the library and it's closed. It's so frustrating. With a sigh, Little Witch Hazel headed off on her next errand. Thimbleberries needed picking, and they at least would not be taking the day off. Look, she's like, I'm going to pick these berries whether anyone likes it or not. And as she picked, a boatful of elves bobbed by on the nearby stream. Hop aboard, one of them called. Join the party. I don't have time, Hazel replied grumpily. Was she the only one in the whole forest who wasn't relaxing? That does look fun though, doesn't it? Going down a little waterfall like that. Drinking out of an acorn cup. Pretty cool. Oh, and even a frog is telling her to come for a ride. The sun was beating down and Little Witch Hazel was starting to get hot when she heard another ship from the stream. This time, it was Wendell and Nadine. Join us, they called. Little Witch Hazel looked at the clear, cool, bubbling water. Oh, I really shouldn't. She looked at her friends' smiling faces. Well, she said, maybe just for a little while, and she hopped on, berries and all. Oh, there's another dog barking now. Where are we going? Little Witch Hazel asked. Oh, nowhere in particular, said Nadine. The stream opened out into a pond, and Wendell, who was an accomplished sailor, steered their raft into the open water. Other small boats emerged to bob alongside their own, all full of chattering creatures enjoying the summer day. Don't any of them have things to do? Little Witch Hazel wondered. Oh, I'm sure of it, Wendell replied, but nothing that can't wait until tomorrow. I need to remember that sometimes. Things can wait. Sometimes you just need to relax and enjoy the nice weather. And I like these little creatures that are around with her. Oh, cut it out. Stop barking, you crazy dog. And Dragonfly and a little mouse. Everybody's out on the stream having a nice relaxing day. But she still looks kind of worried, doesn't she? She looks kind of tired. Maybe she just needs to chill out and stick her feet in the water and relax, hey? Little Witch Hazel sighed and dipped her feet into the pond. Her whole body seemed to relax as the cool water rushed around her ankles. All of her errands, which had seemed so very urgent, were beginning to feel further and further away. All she had to do was sit and listen and breathe in the fragrant summer air. I'm gonna go bonk that dog on the head if it doesn't stop barking. Just kidding. But I would like to sometimes. Oh wow, look at this place. There's a little moss blanket. This little creature. She's finally relaxing. She's laid down on the log raft. She's got her foot in the water and look, oh, naked bum. Some other people are swimming. I like how they have tails. And this one's got, where is it? This one's got a little baby, a little kid, and there's a little green person. I like all these different creatures. And they're all relaxing. Oh, now it's starting to get dark. As dusk fell, a faint tune wafted across the breeze. It grew louder as they approached an island where glowing lights were strung up between the reeds. A band was playing, and from their boats, beasts of all shapes and sizes danced and clapped and sang along. I love how they're just like having a great time all together, listening to the music. Oh, look at this wheelchair that's made out of some sticks. That's cool. This one's having a little drink out of a raspberry. I like this little lantern. It's fun to think of all the things that could happen in the kind of in the reeds beside the water, all the little creatures that could be living there. Maybe they're having a little party while you're having a picnic on the beach. The friends were getting hungry, so Wendell dropped anchor and they shared a picnic supper while the band played. Nadine unwrapped tea cakes. Wendell bartered with a nearby gnome for some cheese, and Little Witch Hazel shared her berries. Look at those yummy snacks they're having. He's getting some cheese. There's the shadows of the other people having their picnics. It wasn't until the moon rose that Hazel, Wendell, and Nadine began to make their way home, across the now glassy, quiet pond. What a wonderful day, thought Little Witch Hazel contentedly. Perhaps tomorrow I'll get something done. There's always tomorrow, my mom used to always say. The laundry's not going anywhere. There's always tomorrow. Autumn, the haunted stump. This is one of my favorite parts of the book. Wow! Little Witch Hazel was working in her garden when she first heard the noise. It was a kind of noise that sent prickles through your whiskers and chilled you right down to your boots. Towering toadstools, thought Little Witch Hazel, a shiver running down her spine. Whatever could that be? I love Little Witch Hazel's pants. I want some pants like this, blue and orange stripes. What could that sound be? It's making such a funny noise. A moment later, the Mole sisters emerged from their hole in a frenzy. Oh, Little Witch, did you hear that noise? The sisters cried. It sounds like the laugh of a hobgoblin robber, squeaked the moles, wringing their paws. The kind who might steal our collection of rubies, or our stashes of stones, or our caches of geodes. Screwy clue! That is a very odd sound. Well, said Hazel, feeling a bit braver now that she had company, there's only one way to find out. What are they going to do? Go looking? Screwy! So, together they headed into the woods to find the source of the sound. Soon they came to the mouse's house, where babies' wails joined the eerie howls coming from the forest. The babies do not like that sound. It's freaking them out. Have you heard it? Look at that's what the mouse is imagining. Have you heard it too? A frazzled mouse papa said. My mouselings can't sleep a wink for this terrible racket. I think it's the sleep sucker out to zap all our naps. Well, said Hazel, come along and find out. I guess that's the sleep sucker, slurping up their naps. It's an ogre with huge stinky feet. It's a bird with a razor-sharp beak. They're imagining the worst things. So together Little Witch Hazel and Mole Sisters, Mouse Papa, and his mouselings headed farther into the forest. Kee-koo-ow! That is a very odd sound. I wonder what it could be. Look, they're holding their mouse papa's tails. I like how the mouse sisters look the same, wear the same clothes. Witch Hazel is starting to look a little bit worried. Not so brave. Soon they came across Newt, who was trying to hide under a log. "You better clear off if you know what's good for you," he called. "There's a terrible ghost haunting that stump. A horrible ghoul with long ghastly claws and long ghostly teeth out to eat little beasts like us." Little Witch Hazel, the Mole Sisters, Mouse Papa, the Mouselings, and Newt all turned to the nearby stump. Sure enough, another howling, yowling, bellowing wail came from within. Ooh! What could it be? Wow! Little Witch Hazel's heartbeat quickened as she approached the stump. As she grew closer, the noise grew louder. Now she's imagining all the things it could be, all these scary monsters, hobgoblins and sleepsuckers, birds, ogres, and ghosts swirled inside her mind. Until finally, with a burst of bravery, Little Witch Hazel flung open the door to find a cute little troll. The tiniest troll she'd ever seen. "Oh, hello," said Little Witch Hazel. The noise stopped as the tiny troll stared at the little witch in surprise. She looks nervous. "Why are you crying?" Little Witch Hazel asked. "I'm new to town, and I have no one to share my supper with," the tiny troll whispered. "I see," said the little witch. "Well, in that case, I think we can help." If you were new to town and you had no one to share your supper with, do you think you'd cry in a stump? So together the neighbors all crowded around into the stump for supper. Little Creature laid out a very beautiful place setting for each of them. "It's fungus soup with pine needles and moss," the little troll beamed eagerly. "Delicious," they all murmured. They're having fun together. Oh, this one looks a little bit like, I don't know if I want to eat that. And that one's saying, they're either licking it or they're going, bleh. And I don't know, what does Newt's face tell you? Maybe it's not the best food, but they're just being polite and sharing it. Because sometimes we have to do that too, right? Just eat what we're given and pretend that we like it so that we don't hurt other people's feelings. By the time supper was over, the old stump felt warm and full, and everyone was yawning happily. "Next time you're lonely, just come on over and knock," Hazel offered, and the tiny troll smiled. And so, with calls of thank you and good night, Little Witch Hazel, the Mole Sisters, Mouse Papa, and the sleepy Mouselings, and Newt all headed home through the still and silent forest, content with the knowledge that they had made a new friend. I like this picture because it's really big. It's like the big forest, kind of maybe how we would see it if we were walking through it. And then there they are, tiny, tiny little creatures along the path in this little hollow of a stump where the little troll lives. Winter, the blizzard. Ooh, and now she's all bundled up because it's going to be cold in the wintertime in the forest. One crisp winter morning, Little Witch Hazel smelled a certain something in the air. It made her nose tingle. The sky was a dusty shade of peach, and the frozen ground crackled under her boots. What a beautiful day to be out and about, she thought. I like to do that too. I like to go outside in the bright morning and everything's just starting to shine and glisten in the frost. That's so pretty. First on her rounds were the chipmunks. One of the children had a toothache, probably from biting a frozen nut again. "Next time you dig up an acorn, let it thaw first," says Little Witch Hazel. "Okay," says the little chipmunk. Next there was a mole with a thorn in its paw. Ow! It can't look. It doesn't want to see it get pulled out. A lonely dryad who just wanted company. Just needed somebody to talk to and have a tea with. And a crow with a frog in its throat. Oh my gosh, it actually had a real frog in its throat. Ah! I wonder how the frog's feeling. Maybe she needs to help the frog. Her day was so busy that Little Witch Hazel hadn't noticed the weather changing. Milky clouds now hung low and heavy in the darkening sky as she ran through the forest on to her last patient's house. Mrs. Rabbit had given birth the week before, and the 4 kits were already starting to grow thin, velvety coats. Little Witch Hazel weighed each bunny, prescribed 2 cups of a raspberry leaf and nettle tea to the new mother, and packed up her things to head home. Look, that's how she's weighing them. She's hanging them in a little cloth blanket, and then she can see how much they've grown. The warm glow of the rabbit's window had just faded from view when the first flakes began to fall. And it wasn't long before the dark forest sparkled under a bright dusting of fresh snow. I'll be home soon, thought Little Witch Hazel. I doubt this will keep up for much longer. She looks so tiny again in that big, big forest. But it did. Soon the woods were blanketed. Every stump and stone along the familiar route home was now completely obscured under mounds of white. The tall, dark trees whose branches usually danced and swayed in the wind now sagged and creaked under their new coats. Little Witch Hazel shivered. Just keep to the path, she told herself. You can't be far from home now. I wonder if she's so tiny. I wonder how big those snowflakes must be. I wonder if they're as big as her. It would be very hard to walk through such thick snow. Oh, now she's getting very cold. But the path seemed to have disappeared. Little Witch Hazel suddenly felt very alone and very cold and very tired. I'll just rest for a few minutes, she thought. Then maybe I'll be able to find my way back. Then suddenly, just as she'd begun to curl up and close her eyes, a huge tawny shape swooped out of the swirling sky and picked her up. The next thing Little Witch Hazel knew, she was soaring through the night, nestled against very warm, very soft, and very familiar feathers. Otis, whispered Little Witch Hazel. Hoo, hoo, said Otis. Aha, Otis was keeping an eye on her this whole time. Otis had no trouble finding home through the swirling, billowing clouds of white. Inside, Little Witch Hazel's house was all warm and safe. Otis tucked her into bed and tucked himself onto his old roost. See, there he is. Then they both slept soundly through the cold winter night. I like how his big claw, his big talon comes in and just tucks her in. Nice and cozy. And that's the end of the story. Isn't that a cool book? Okay, I'm going to flip it around and we'll talk about it. So, what do you guys think of that book? Wasn't it great? It's a longer one. Takes a little bit more to get through, but it sure is a great story. I like how all the seasons tie together, and then at the end, it all comes back full circle from the beginning where she has the egg, and then Otis comes and helps her because she helped him. So, I hope you had a great time listening to that story, even though there was a dog barking and airplanes flying overhead, but I thought it'd be nice to read it outside because it's starting to get nice out, kind of. It's a bit of a late spring this year. Yeah, and if you want to read more of Phoebe Wall's books, she is a great author and illustrator. I think she was, I read in her biography here, this little description of her on the back. Actually, I'll read it to you. Phoebe Wall's work focuses on themes of comfort, nostalgia, and intimacy with nature. She grew up unschooled in Washington State and credits her free-spirited childhood in the Northwest for much of her inspiration and work ethic. She works in a variety of mediums from watercolor and collage to fabric sculpture. Phoebe graduated from Rhode Island School of Design with a BFA in illustration, currently lives in Bellingham, Washington. She is the award-winning author and illustrator of Sonia's Chickens, Backyard Fairies, and The Blue House. So those are some of her other books, and I think that part of the magic of her writing and storytelling and drawing comes from the fact that she was encouraged as a kid to do a lot of creative projects and creative thinking and kind of like living in a bit of a magical mindset. So try and do that if you can. And I hope you guys have a great bit of time until I read again. All right, bye.